Well, I was in college, unsure of my future, and I was majoring in English and sociology, which exactly didn't have a focus. And my husband I was newly married, and my husband was in medical school, and I spent hours and hours at the medical library at his medical school with him, mostly behaving kind of badly, like annoying him and making noise and being bored. And somehow that came to mean that I should go into library work, and I don't understand that at all. But I decided as I was approaching my graduation, that I needed to go to graduate school, and I wasn't sure what to do, and thought about getting a PhD in sociology and all kinds of other things. But I had a coworker who was in library school at the Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, and I went to school with her one day and thought it seemed like a really cool thing to do, and her classes seemed really interesting, and I thought, oh, this could be a good way to go. But of course, I had been behaving badly in the library for the last 3 years, so I had to give some thought to that. But I decided to do that, and I wanted to start in January since I graduated early with my bachelor's, and the program most appropriate for me was Long Island University, which was a fairly new library school out on Long Island, and I was living in Brooklyn, and it was a reverse commute, so that was exciting. And watching the Long Island Expressway parking lot on the other side as I would drive out to school. But I did the master's degree, had a really great time. It was a great group of people, it was a really low-key atmosphere, and a little bit intimidating because it was a place that a fair number of people would come back as adults to get their library degree. They were library assistants in the Nassau County library system. So they weren't professional librarians, and they wanted to move up. So they were coming back to this program, which was local, for them to get their degrees. And they had worked in libraries for years, some of them. So they knew so much. And I was coming right from college. I had no background. I had never worked in the library as a student, had no knowledge of anything. So I was really coming cold to this master's program. But after I got past that and realized that, everybody has to start somewhere, it turned out to be a really good choice. Unfortunately, I came into a really terrible job market. And so we were going to be in New York a little longer and then moving on for my husband's internship. So I decided that I better learn to type and get some kind of skills that would get me an office job in the meantime, because there were literally no library positions open. It was really terrible. And I knew I was leaving New York most likely, so I didn't want to take a job and leave it in a few months. So I actually went to the Catherine Gibbs School in New York City, which used to be a finishing school, but kind of reinvented itself as a place to learn typing and stenography. They had something called the Entree Program for bachelor's degree candidates. So I was in this room learning typing and steno with all these other recent college grads, which was quite an experience. But that allowed me to get my first real job as in an office. And it turned out that first job was at UCLA in the Division of Gastroenterology. I've been around medicine a lot in my life. As I said, my husband was now finishing his medical school training. My brother's a physician, had graduated a few years prior to my husband. So I was really comfortable in the medical world. And working in the GI division, I learned an enormous amount about medicine in a year that I was there. And I worked for a wonderful man who was the chairman, and did a lot of library research for him and the other doctors in the office. And was feeling so badly that I couldn't get an actual library position because there just were no openings. We moved back to the East Coast. Again, there were very few jobs around. So I ended up at Johns Hopkins doing a job as an editorial assistant for a neurologist where I stayed 3 years and helped him write a book called Viral Diseases of the Nervous System. His name's Richard Johnson. He was a wonderful man. Again, learned a tremendous amount of medicine, did a lot of research for him in the Welsh Medical Library at Johns Hopkins. Felt like I lived there, basically. And finally, as the book was wrapping up and going to publish, I got my first library position in an academic library at what was then Towson State University in Baltimore. And that's where I really began my professional career as a librarian, as a reference librarian.